it's Karolyn. I'm about to make a two-dimensional one of these Shopkins cookies, and I wanted to show you how I do that, so stay tuned so you can see what I do. Okay, so to start, I have this picture here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to want the bigger part, the tan part of this, to be a thicker fondant. So I rolled this out about a 1/2 inch thick. And then you have to look at all the different colors that you're going to need. So I need brown, white, blue, and black, and a little bit of pink. So with those colors, I'm going to roll them out really thin in fondant. The brown, the white, the blue, the black, I already have rolled out in fondant. All these different colors. So what I do when I roll out my fondant, I mix it with a little bit of Tylose powder. The Tylose powder is going to allow the fondant to stiffen up, kind of like gum paste, so it's easier to work with. I have my cutting board. I have a wet paper towel here that I always use to wipe my X-Acto knife. I have an X-Acto knife here that I can wet, or that I can wipe off fondant that sticks to it on that paper towel. I have 2 needle tools. These are my favorite tools, so I always have a bunch of them. And I have a Dresden tool. This has a flat end on one side, a pointy end on the other, and it's really good for smoothing. I'm going to start by placing this down on the cutting board, and I'm going to place this on top of it, the picture on top of it. So I want to make sure that it's not sticking off, that it's totally on the fondant. And I'm going to take my needle tool and start poking along the outside to make the shape. I'm basically transferring the shape onto the fondant underneath. Exactly, if you poke the dots exactly on the picture, then when you cut it, it's going to be smaller than the picture. So I always go a little bit further outside. The needle tool starts to stick a little bit, and that's when I wipe it on the paper towel, the wet paper towel, and then I can keep poking through. You want to make sure that you hold the picture down so it doesn't lift off of the fondant. So keep going all the way around. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. So if I take these feet away, basically this cookie is going to continue underneath. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look past the feet and continue the cookie under the feet. So that's a little tricky part about this. Now, before you take this off, I'm going to take this Dresden tool and I'm going to take the pointy side and I'm going to lightly push through the paper so it transfers onto the fondant, the detail in here. So you have to just look at the picture and see where the detail is. So here's the lines for the ears. I have these cheeks here. So I kind of want to draw that in. And here is a little nose. I'm not pressing too hard. I just want to make a little imprint on the fondant underneath. I just want to press this to show me where I'm going to put the mouth. So, and then the eyebrows, I'm going to cut a piece of fondant out and put them there. But I'm making the impression here with the eyebrows so I can see where to put them when I cut the fondant out. It'll make sense later. So I take that off and you can see that there's a little line impression. So for the lines that are going to stay, the ears, I'm just going to take my tool and trace where those lines are. And then the cheeks here. So now I can start to cut this out. I want to make sure my blade is clean, so wiping it on the wet paper towel. And now I'm not going to cut the whole way through yet. I'm just going to make a marker line. So staying on the inside of the dots, I'm just kind of sawing this up and down and just kind of making a marker line. I'm going to keep the picture here so I can pay attention to the shape as I'm cutting it. So I'm not cutting the whole way through. That way I don't drag the fondant. So it's easier to make a marker line first and then cut the whole thing off. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Okay, now that I have that line, I can take the knife and put it all the way down, and now I'm going to drag it to cut the whole thing. Okay, now I can take this away. So now I have this cut out. If you look at it, it's a little sloppy on here. So I like to take my fingers, first of all, I like to flip it over and kind of smooth the underside. And now work on the sides. There are pieces, I'm not gonna say pieces of fondant, but there's like jagged edges that you can smooth out with your finger or a tool. Always make sure your hands are clean, obviously. This part takes a long time to do, but it makes such a difference in the final product. It's gonna look a lot cleaner and neater if you take the time to smooth everything out. So now I wanna cut out these chocolate chips. If you look at the picture, the chips are different sizes. So I have this little tin here that I keep a bunch of different icing tips in. I've been using icing tips for so long to cut circles. I know that this is a 12, this is a 10, this is a 9. So I need 12, 10, 9, and 8. And they have the numbers right here on the outside. All right, I found 12, 10, and 9. So that'll have to do. Whatever. It really doesn't matter. So I'm gonna make, 5 big ones and then 3 middle ones and 2 small ones. So just pressing the top of the tip into the fondant. And now I have a little bit of water and a paintbrush. So I'm going to take the big cookie and start to take these little dots and place them on the cookie, kind of relative to where they are in the picture. Using a little bit of water, a little goes a long way. And now we move on to the eyes. Look at these eyes. It's black on blue, on white, on black. I have a bunch of these Atico tips that are all different sizes that I use when I cut out little circles like this. So I'm going to take the tip and put it on top of the eye and see. This is a good size for the outside one, for the outside black line. Then I need something the size of the white, which is going to be a little smaller than that. And this works. So this is going to be black, this is going to be white. And then I need something the blue size. So this is good for blue. And then the black on the inside, which I think I'm going to use this one for the blue and the black. I'll show you how I do it. Eyes can be a pain in the ass. They take forever. So we're going to start from the inside and work our way out. So I'm going to start with black and cut 2 holes for black. Smoothing the edges as I cut them if they're jagged. And now I also need blue. And I'm using the same tip. This is a tip number 805 Atico. I wipe the tips on the paper towel to get the color, the black color off before I put it in a lighter color. This black is on top of the blue, but it's a little bit, it's not perfectly on top. I'll show you what I mean. I'm so much better at thinking things than really explaining them. So I'm gonna take a little water on the back of my paintbrush and wet 3/4 of the back of this black piece. And I'm gonna take it and put it on like this. So you have a little bit of the blue and a little bit of the a little bit of the blue showing underneath the black. And do that for both pieces. Okay, now I want to do the white. So for the white, I'm using an Atico 807. Cut out 2 circles. I'm going to put the blue part on top of the white, so I need to let some of the white hang out. So I'm wetting my brush, and I'm going to wet the back of the blue and put it on top of the white so the white sticks out like in the picture. And now we need that on top of black. So the outer piece is an 808 Atico tip. I'm going to take my thin black and cut 2 circles. I'm going to wet the back of the white part and put that directly in the center of the black so I get a thin black outline around the whole thing. There we go. It looks a little weird now, but we will cut it. So now I have to get rid of this extra piece sticking off of the edge. So I have just a small circle cutter from an Atico circle set that I'm going to use to just cut that off. Just the black part that's sticking off. Making sure I don't cut off the black outline on the bottom. So I'm just really just cutting off that top part. So I didn't push the whole way down. Now I'm using my X-Acto knife to cut the rest of it off. And here's the first eye. Now we do the same for the other side. And here's both of the eyes. So now if you look on here, the cheeks stick out over the eyes. So I'm going to have to cut off part of the eye at the bottom. So I'm going to line this up on top of the eye, having the black part go up. And take this cutter and cut off the bottom part of the eye so it takes this shape. And do the same for the other side. Now I'm going to bring back the head of the cookie and place them on there, right above where the line is for the cheeks. And then take a little bit of water on the back of my brush, lightly lift this up so I can get some water underneath it to press it back down. Now this does have a little nose here, so I'm going to just take a piece of the fondant that I set aside after I cut this off and just rip a little tiny piece of fondant off. I'm going to roll it into a small little ball. And here's the nose. I'm going to place the water on the back and put the nose down. I like to use the end of the brush to manipulate the pieces into place. Okay, so now I need to do the feet. I also have some thick fondant rolled out in this pink color. Place the paper on top, and now I'm going to lightly poke holes around the shape of the feet. Taking my Dresden tool and making lines where needed, just really in the middle, and then redefining that line before I cut it out. I do the same thing with my X-Acto knife. I lightly push through to make the marker line. And then after I have the marker line, push it the whole way through to cut out the feet. And just like always, after I cut anything out, smoothing the edges and everything with my hands to make it all nice and pretty. This cutter is the same size as the humps in these feet. So what I'm going to do is just cut out that, and now I can stick these in there. So there's his feet. The shape of this mouth is the same size of this Atico 808. So I'm going to cut a little circle out of here, and then I'm going to take a wider cutter and cut the top part. And there's the mouth. Wet the back with a little bit of water and place it onto the cookie. So now I need the teeth, which is really just a little tiny rectangle. So I'll take my X-Acto knife tiny pieces are so difficult to work with. Smoothing out the edges with your fingers and then wetting the back. And there's the teeth. So now we need eyebrows and eyelashes. So I'm going to just lay these on top and poke around to get the shape. I'm cutting them out, smoothing the edges, and adding them to the cookie, just like we've done with everything else. And now I want to add the cheeks. So I'm also going to take a little bit of this fondant that I had from cutting this cookie out and take a piece of it that I can break into two. Try to make them even and roll them into little balls. Or more like oval. Flatten them out a little bit. And they look pretty good, so I'm going to do the same thing and wet the back. And I'm just going to I'm going to freehand it and try to cut out these little teardrop shaped eyelashes. And now we're going to put the eyelashes back on the cookie, which this could be difficult because these pieces are so small. So a lot of times I have a little bit of water on here. You can pick it up just by pressing. Oh, it flipped over. So if it flipped over, it's good because you can just get the back of it with the paintbrush. And now the top one comes out. I'm going to use a different brush for the pink. A little bit of this will go a long way. It's better to start off using a little and then working your way up than putting on too much because it's hard to get it off once you put it on. Give her some rosy cheeks. And now I just want to give her a little more dimension. Looks like under here, there's a shadow. So I'm going to take the chocolate and just lightly dust here. And I just want to give her a little bit more dimension. This is where you really don't want a lot of color on your brush, but I'm just going to kind of color her in. You really, when you do something like this, you really don't want to have a lot of color on your brush. Because wherever you start, you're going to have brush marks if you have too much on there. So really a little bit. Okay, so nowhere to stop. Don't go too crazy with coloring her in. So she is going to go on the top of the cake. Now, if you're going to have her on the side of the cake, you know what? I never wet these. So I need to put a little bit of water on here so it sticks in there. If you're going to put her on the side of a 6-inch dummy, if you're going to put her on the side of a 6-inch cake, take a 6-inch dummy and place her on there so she'll dry with a curve. If you want her to dry with a curve, maybe you want her to dry straight. If you want her to dry straight, you just leave her here to dry. I'm actually going to put her on top of the cake. So what I did, I have a skewer here, a bamboo skewer that I just wet the top part, and I'm going to insert the skewer into the cookie. So what you want to do, this can get a little tricky. You have to eyeball it and make sure the skewer goes straight in. It's not going to pop up and come out or pop down. You know, you don't want the skewer to show. So what you do is you want to make sure you start with the pointy end and push it right in the middle. And what I'm doing here, I'm twisting the skewer back and forth. I'm not just going to push it in there because that's going to distort the cookie. So I'm just taking the skewer and I'm rotating it, rolling it back and forth. And what I do is I constantly flip it over to make sure I can kind of see it coming through the bottom here. So making sure that it's not going to poke out through the top or the bottom. This is the part you don't want to ruin your decoration. So you have to keep making sure that it's not showing. I've been doing this for years, so I'm pretty good at it. So this is going to go into the top of the cake. I can take some snips here and just cut this bottom piece off because this might be a little too long. And then she can just sit up into the cake. But I'm going to want to let her dry for at least a day. Sometimes you can just use decorations like this right away. She's still a little soft and pliable. So I am going to just let her dry flat since she's going on the top of the cake. And I will just set her aside to dry for about 24 hours. So here you go. Here's your little adorable 2-dimensional Shopkins cookie cake decoration. I hope you liked this video. Feel free to like it if you liked it and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I am on Facebook and Instagram, and I have my website if you want to follow me online. And feel free to leave any questions below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.